to Joe Biden. So,
all right, get my mic on.
Yeah. So
it is 6:30.
Showed me a picture of young
hello,
Richie,
good
his son,
evening,
was out
everyone. Welcome to the
with a-
Monomoy
yeah,
Regional
with a-
School
with a,
Committee meeting for Thursday, October 22nd. We are getting started. Jackie, we're getting started. Thursday, October 22nd. And this meeting is being held partially remotely in accordance with the Governor of Massachusetts, March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, GLC 30A, Section 20. So we're calling this meeting to order at 6:30. We do have to do a roll call attendance because we are partially remote. So we're going to start in the Zoom room. Sharon and Joe, if you will say your name and present. So, Joe?
Joseph Osceola, presente.
Thank you. Sharon?
Sharon, present.
Sharon Stout, present. Thank you. Jackie?
Jackie Zebrat Long, present.
Thank you. Meredith?
Meredith Henderson, present.
Thank you. Nancy?
Nancy Scott, present.
Terry?
Terry Russell present.
Joanne? And Tina Games, present. So the first order of business is approval of minutes from October 8th, 2020. Could I have a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
All right, so Jackie moved, Nancy seconded. Any discussion? All right, we're going to roll call vote for approval, starting in the Zoom room. Sharon, we'll start with you this time. Approval of minutes.
Aye.
Thank you. Joe?
Joe Osceola, aye.
Thank you. Jackie?
Aye.
Meredith?
Abstain.
Oh, abstain, thank you. Nancy?
Aye.
Terry?
I was absent without leave, so I abstained.
Okay, thank you. Joanne? Aye. And I'm an aye. So that does pass the minutes. And now we move to our student representative, Ms. Amy Hinesley. Welcome, Amy. Go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you again to the school committee for having me here. Though it has only been a month since I last updated you all, a lot has been going on around Monomoy. The Monomoy Equity Task Force launched, and many students have taken the initiative to join faculty and community members in helping our district address and take action against disparities in education. Every month, the Chatham Rotary Club selects a student who embodies character, achievement, and leadership at Monomoy. A big congratulations is extended to October's Rotary Student of the Month, Senior Owen Avalar. And with the help of and hard work of Miss Grogan, the shore and sand teachers, and the students in our Best Buddies program, I'm pleased to announce that the Special Olympics Massachusetts has recognized Monomoy as a unified champion school. Meanwhile, in the sports section, the Monomoy teams have led a strong first month of their seasons in playing various teams on Cape while remaining COVID safe. Boys soccer has beat Sandwich, lost to Nauset, and tied SJP, Sturgis East, Sturgis West, and Rising Tide. Girls soccer has beat Sturgis East and Rising Tide, lost to Nauset, Sandwich, and SJP, and tied Sturgis West. Field hockey has won versus SJP, Sturgis East and West, and Barnstable, and the girls took a loss to Nauset and have made improvements since. Boys golf has beat Cape Cod Academy, Rising Tide, Sturgis East, and lost to St. John Paul, Cape Cod Academy, and Sturgis West. In cross country, our cross country team is undefeated with strong performances against Sturgis West, St. John Paul, Cape Cod Academy, and Falmouth. Our September Scholar Athletes of the Month were Aiden Melton of the cross country team and Josie Ganshaw of the girls soccer team. Our Oak Street Academy students have been focusing on cooking and make fresh meals for our MRHS staff every Friday. Additionally, they make the natural sanitizer that we use on our desks after every class in order to ensure maximum safety. They are also making longboards in the Monomoy Woodshop as a way to learn practical woodcrafting skills. Meanwhile, the school stores are open both upstairs and downstairs before and during school. They're run by our amazing shore students who've been doing an outstanding job not only selling snacks and drinks, but spreading their contagious enthusiasm and positive energy throughout the school. On October 15th, the faculty held a virtual curriculum night where parents got to take part in classes via Google Meet. Teachers and staff sent out meet links, and parents followed them like a regular school schedule, but much shorter. Though technological challenges always present themselves, the event was a success and parents were able to get a handle on their children's educational schedules, and as an added bonus, they were able to see how remote learning can sometimes be a little bit difficult. Andrew Davik, a senior, has earned his Eagle Scout Award, which is the highest rank or achievement of Boy Scouts. And our Political Action Club is hosting congressional debate over Zoom prior to the upcoming election tomorrow from 9 to 10 a.m. with William Keating, Helen Brady, and Michael Manley, who will be participating in the debate hosted by the students of Political Action Club with our advisor, Mr. Dixon. The questioners, moderators, and panelists will be members of the Political Action Club, and the public is encouraged to stream it. It will be on Channel 22 Local News along with the WMRS YouTube channel. Lastly, the class of 2024 is fundraising on Halloween, where they will be hosting a drive-through trick-or-treating event. From 4:30 to 6:30, kids of all ages will be able to collect candy around the outside of the building from their teachers, who will be dressed up in fun costumes. Please come join us in the festivities. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Amy. Wonderful report. Any questions, comments for Amy, Joe, Sharon? All right, Amy, wonderful job. Thank you. We'll see you in 2 weeks. All right, thank you. Moving to the next item of business is public comment. Do we have anybody from the public who would like to speak? You do have 5 minutes. All right, seeing none, we're going to move to the next item of business, which is recognitions. Dr. Carpenter.
I don't have any this evening.
Wow, okay. Moving into section F, reports and discussions. The first item under that category is MRHS, the high school distance learning seminar classes presentation. So I believe this is happening in the Zoom room.
Yes,
Fantastic.
hi, thank you. My name is George Sopel, for those who don't know me, and I'm one of 4 teachers this year that are teaching the Individual and Society, which is our distance learning seminar. And I'll just take a few moments to go over it and then perhaps open it up for any questions. My colleagues, I know, Lisa Forte Doyle and Rich Houston and Matt Brown are here. So the seminar is what's called a 7th course, or it's a seminar that all students in the school take. Normally they would choose electives or be assigned various courses in the academic center. But in this case, this is a seminar that all students in grades 8 to 12 will take. And the idea behind it is several-fold, but a large one is to help promote a better understanding of a lot of what's happening around us, major current events, et cetera. It's, as I mentioned, a semester course, which means it'll wrap up in January, and another group will start then. So, but it is a 4-credit course. And so kind of, you know, this spawned out of the school committee resolution that you guys put together. And we sat down in developing this. We focused on 4 areas, 4 themes, if you will. And those are, as you can see in front of you, you know, community, race and society, the idea of freedom and responsibility, and our, you know, the idea of diversity and beliefs and values, and helping students, you know, perhaps understand where, you know, what makes up us as individuals. So we have, you know, roughly 650 students in the school with 4 teachers. So if you do the math on that, you wind up with each teacher having 5 sections, or roughly 85 students per semester. And again, the outcomes we hope to have, and I think we're seeing, are, you know, a strengthening of awareness of major issues. You know, we've had students that we kind of, you know, I personally expect that, you know, wow, they'll know quite a bit about a particular area, and you find that many of them don't, and they're very appreciative of the opportunity to learn about them. It also gives students a voice. I think in this time and climate right now, we all feel that that's really important, that students are able to, you know, to voice their opinions on a lot of things, and especially in this setting, in this type of a setting, it's asynchronous, so there's a little less discomfort with, you know, worrying about what their peers might think of them. So there's a greater opportunity for them to to say what they feel. And finally, the idea of it is to develop 21st century skills, critical thinking, using facts to defend opinions and arguments, etc. So just in wrapping it up, I'm sure you might have some questions, but just some feedback. We are very happy to provide that if people want that in a more detailed way, but just a couple of items that stuck out were, students saying, I had no idea about this, and that happened to be about, COVID and its impact on different, different segments of the population. So I think it's a very important thing we're doing, but it also gives us a chance to support the students in a bit of a different way. All right.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Sapel. Do any
All
of
right.
your colleagues that are here with you want to add anything? All right.
Mr. Houston? No?
Mr. Houston?
No? I think we were prepared if there were any questions.
Okay,
We
yeah,
kind of
we're
each
gonna
have a
open it up.
lane we could
Sure.
stick to, but if there aren't any, we're fine too.
All right, I see a
Ms.
question.
Raphael?
Yep, we do have some questions. We'll start
That
in the
invitation, who
Joe?
can say no? I think the whole idea is you don't sit by silently and not get involved. So, forgive me for it being a generic question, but it's still one I tend to ask for new programs. At this point, launching out, what do you think, or what do you conceive? What does success look like at this point in your mind? If you have a successful program, how will you know?
I think we all can answer. Go ahead.
Do you want me to jump in here, George?
Yes, please, Rich, thanks.
Thanks for the question, Joe, and thanks to the school committee and the administration for the leadership in not just developing this program, but I think all of the accommodations that we've been trying to make to deal with this crisis that we're facing. I think our district has really, been the leader on the Cape and around the state. But Joe, to your question in particular, one of the things that the four of us, the four instructors, have been working on is a common assessment, including, since it's a semester class, what we want the final exam, or what would fall under the category of midterm exam in January, which would be the end of the class for the first semester. And one of the things that we're including in that is a portfolio in which the students are taking samples of the work that they've done over the course of the semester, and some of the individual projects that they're doing are distinct with each of the four teachers, even though we're all teaching on those common themes that George identified at the beginning of his presentation. So they're going to be selecting work that they've done that shows their greater understanding of those four themes that are at the heart of the class. And then we've got a reflective piece that's going to be included where, I think, to get to the heart of your question, Joe, this allows us to get the self-reporting from the students as to how they've made progress on the understanding and applying some of the things they've learned to their real-world experience.
All right, wonderful. Any, Ms. Doyle, looks like you want to chime in? And you'll need to unmute yourself.
I'm Lisa Forte Doyle, teaching in the Monomoy district since its start and earlier in the Chatham district for a long time. I just would like to, I won't be long. I want to add that into Joe's question, so many responses I've been getting from students sound similar. Oh, I didn't realize that. Or, oh, I didn't know that. And it's, I think by the end of the course, with the portfolio, the personal reflection, and then a lot of the evidence that we'll be able to show, I think we'll be able to demonstrate that students come away with a greater awareness. Perhaps even, not that we want to change minds, but we want to open minds to others' opinions, others' perspectives. And a lot of that is happening online, in discussions online. They're not necessarily face-to-face, but kids are commenting on each other's opinions. I just had a discussion on Columbus Day regarding should we celebrate it or not. And a lot of kids didn't know about the terrible things that the discovery, or I guess the landing of Columbus caused. But at the same time, as an Italian American, I'm somewhat sensitive to this topic. A lot of students didn't know why the Columbus Day holiday was even created in the first place. And which is, you know, we had Italian Americans being lynched in this country. Who knew that? So those are I did too, Joe. Those are the kinds of things that I'm trying to, without getting into major political arguments. I try to avoid politics completely. Now, we're all a little bit different, all four of us. We're all teaching slightly differently. But I just want to open minds and share opinions with respect and with maturity, and let kids express themselves and talk to each other. That's my goal in this seminar, and that's really all of our goals. Nobody's trying to push any opinion on anybody. We're really encouraging kids to express themselves and learn from each other. We're just really facilitating.
Thank you.
That's all I want to say.
Thank you. And Sharon,
Thank you.
before I take your question, Mr. Brown, do you have anything you'd like to add to Joe's question?
Only a little bit. I think because the course is so new, and because we have been, it's an old metaphor that people keep using, and I'll use it again. We're building the plane while we're flying it. But in this case, the plane is starting off as a Cessna, and it's going to end up as a Dreamliner, is my opinion. I think that we're creating the course as we go. When we're done, we'll know we're successful because we will have a fully fleshed out curriculum and a set of tools to use to accomplish the goals of the course, which we've set in the syllabus.
All right, thank you. Sharon, we'll take your question. Go ahead.
Oh, you know me, I have more than one.
Okay, go ahead.
So, this is very exciting for me. I'm very interested. I know the impetus for this was solely around anti-racism, but it seems as though it's become more of not only that, but diversity or equality. So I would be interested in hearing now, or having sent or something, some kind of examples of what lesson or assignment or something, and in particular, if there's anything being done on equality for women.
All right, good question. Anybody want to take that?
I'll take, Rich, go ahead.
I'll jump in and make a couple of quick comments. Thank you, Sharon. If you notice, one of the major themes, the four major themes, is race and society.
Yes.
And
Yes.
the school committee folks should know that one of the first assignments that I had the students working on was to watch the videotape of the discussion and vote on the school committee resolution, and to write a reflective piece about what they learned and how they felt about the resolution, and to break down the resolution itself, and to take a closer look at some of the issues that were at the heart of the resolution, both versions of it, the statewide association language and the locally crafted language. And so there are a lot of issues that came up from the students as they were working on this project over the course of about a week. So I think it's important to know that right from the start, the students are seeing a connection. And then the other thing I would add in before I defer to my colleagues is what I'm trying to do is to help them see the connection between some of the big issues on the national level and how it filters down to the local level. Because I've found over the last 43 years of working with high school kids that when they can see the connection between something right next door and how it's playing out on the national or international level, it acts as a greater impetus to get involved and to understand and to want to engage in it. So one of the other projects they worked on was to do a project connected to the 2 town meetings that we recently had. And you could see in both the annual town meeting for Harwich and the special town meeting for Chatham, how some of the issues regarding equity in society filtered up through those issues. In the case of Chatham, it was a single item on the warrant, but having to do with housing and zoning, it wasn't too difficult for the students, and it was very fascinating to see some of the commentary they added to their essays on that issue and how it showed the connection to the larger context. And of course, in the Harwich Town meeting, being a longer and a more complex meeting, I think it was a lot easier for them to pick from amongst the many debated issues there to see the connection, which also, of course, included an affordable housing issue, the budgetary issues, how the budgetary issues are interconnected with the economy and all of the other issues flowing from the crises that we've been facing. So that might help a little bit. But yes, Sharon, dealing with gender-related issues and other issues of equity will all be touched upon as we go through the semester.
I really appreciate that, and I love the way you went local out and out local. That I do agree totally that the kids have to see something in their life to connect with some of this. So that was very helpful.
Thank you.
I'll just share another idea, another example. I know we don't want to take your whole meeting up tonight, but just to give you a quick overview, I think we try to present multiple sides to the situation. So we looked at, my students particularly looked at COVID from the standpoint of, what are the facts behind it? Because there's so much, kids today rely on social media, and there's so many myths and things that may not necessarily be based in fact out there. So we looked at that, and and so they were given a number of resources to use for that. They, choice is big with all of us. So they could choose from, some material from Fox that was editorialized, some CNN stuff, some middle of the road, and then introduce them to the COVID database, the state database. So there's some real hard facts. We then started to look at, they chose to look at, data within demographic data about our school as a community, and finding out that, we were pretty evenly matched, males and females, and that was a surprise to them. And then expanded again that out, as Rich said, to, the state and the impact that COVID is having on people of color and certain populations that are, a lot more heavily impacted. So there's a dissemination of facts that comes from, the world the kids search for. But then I think all of us embed some critical thinking in that as, how, explaining how that, that fits into the real world.
Thank you. I really like that critical thinking. We can use a ton of that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Sharon, was that your only question? You said you had another one?
I think my questions that I had were already taken up with these answers.
Okay,
Thank
perfect. Wonderful. Anybody in the room? Terry?
Thanks, Tina. Thanks, folks, for taking this on. I can appreciate building and doing at the same time. A question from the flyer, George. On that last page, you have 3 circles. The first says strengthen awareness of major issues. And my thinking in this, you can just affirm it, those major issues, the kids as well as yourselves are developing on that second page. We have 4 themes: community, race and society, freedom, and diversity, beliefs, values. The major subjects will be generated under those themes. I only ask it because I'm thinking in terms of 2 years or 3 years down the line. If we want to adopt the program this year and then launch it every year, it would be good for us, obviously, to know how this is fleshed out as the year goes on, and realizing it's only into it for the first month. I can appreciate, but am I thinking the same way you guys are?
Mr. Brown, you want to speak to that? Matt's done a lot of work on the curriculum end of it.
Sure. One of the things that we've been discovering in our discussions as we sort of created the framework for this course is that what we've come up with in terms of themes and especially learning outcomes for the course fit very nicely with certain framework standards, especially framework standards from the social studies skills standards, and including 21st century skills, and also the English language arts skills standards, but also in terms of the conceptual framework for the course. A great deal of it looks like it will be coming from the the American Sociological Association's frameworks for sociology in high school. About 3 out of the 4 units will be able to draw heavily from those. And so I think to a great extent, the content of the course will eventually be tied to the conceptual framework of an intro sociology course. And the final section, the freedom and responsibility section, I think will be drawn primarily from civics standards in the MASC framework standards. Does that answer your question, sir?
Yes, yeah, thanks.
Good.
Wonderful. Anything else?
Can I add a quick
Oh, go
follow-up,
ahead,
George?
yes. Go ahead.
Is that okay?
Yes,
Madam
please.
Yeah, please, yeah, thank you. Yeah.
So one of the things that is interesting about launching this on short notice from August is that it's partly the way we're trying to accommodate the overall difficulties of the hybrid system we put together. And one of the things about this is that, as George mentioned earlier, every student from 8 to 12 is taking this class. So by the end of this year, every student in the school will have had the class. So one of the things that we're wrestling with as we move forward, because the intent, as has been made clear, is that this is designed to be a pioneering effort that will in some way continue as we move forward, regardless of the status of the emergency we're in now. But what we're doing with 8th grade students in the sections that are 8th graders versus what we're doing with sections, I happen to have, most of my sections are seniors. You're dealing with the same 4 themes, but what you're doing with the students of their developmental status is of necessity different. So as we move forward, that's part of what we're grappling with, is how we're going to morph this, I'll call it emergency adaptation, to a more permanent manifestation of some of the directive that in many ways goes back to the resolution from this school committee.
Thank you. Ms. Doyle, anything to add? You good? And you're on mute.
I'm always muting. I just think I'd like to share a recent activity that I did that's not even finished, and that is Detective Brackett from the Harwich Police Department was kind enough to speak to first of all, to come to me in a Zoom meeting so that I could record it, open it to students so they could be live in attendance there and ask him questions. But because I recorded it, all my students got to see this interview, and the students came up with the questions. I had asked them days earlier to, what do you want to ask a police detective? And literally about anything. And as you can imagine, I'd say about 60 to 70% of the questions dealt with the protests this year, relationships here on the Cape or locally in Harwich with communities of color, with teens of color. I mean, they asked everything. And he was really great. I mean, he gave us a full 35 minutes of his time to answer those questions. There are still questions. I said we're not quite finished because the students still have several questions that they didn't feel he answered completely. And so we're still going to ask him a few more. But one of the things we're hoping to do is follow in the lead of Outward Bound Baltimore, which is a group my oldest son works for down in Baltimore. They created a wonderful program with the Baltimore police to sort of have police officers and young people on an equal plane, playing sports, having picnics, playing trivia games, and doing an art project together in which nobody's in a uniform, nobody's being called sir or officer, everybody's on a first name basis. And Baltimore has found this to be very successful. And as I said to the kids, as well as Detective Brackett. Look, we're not in the dire straits that Baltimore was, our relationships with most of our police officers are quite good. But as several students said to me, not that great, Mrs. Doyle, not really. So what we're hoping to do is actually come up with some ideas for activities that may be sports related, but not always sports related, because several of our kids aren't interested in playing sports, in which we do a little bit more with our local police in Chatham and Harwich, and maybe even reach out a little more to Dennis police, because a lot of our students come from the DY district. So I wanted to share that with you, that I and all of us it's more than just having a voice. We'd like to really create some action too, positive action. And that's a strong goal for me and for all of us.
Thank you very much. Anybody else?
I would just
Comments?
like to thank
Yes.
everybody for bearing with us and hearing us. And also I want to really thank Dr. Carpenter, because he and Miss Police, I think, were really important in putting this together and giving us a lot of freedom as veteran teachers, but still, to kind of to give us that leeway and allow us to pull from each other, from the students, to develop this over time. It's really it's a credit to our district. And Scott, Dr. Carpenter has put together lots of resources, and as my colleagues have said, it's kind of a learning curve, and we're piloting this, and our hope is in December to sit down and get some input and see where we go with it. We have lots of ideas, but I can't say enough, that how grateful we are again to Scott and Jen. So thank you, and thank you all for listening to us.
Absolutely. Any questions?
Great
Jill,
amount of support. We're very grateful.
Oh, thank you. We still have a couple more questions, so bear with us here. Joanne?
Not a question, just a comment, that in such a brief amount of time, you already got into the integration piece. And I just loved hearing that as a language arts teacher, that you pulled that into the readings and discussions and writing. Sounds great.
All right. Thank you. Anybody else? Nancy?
George, you actually started saying your thank yous before I was going to. I was going to say thank you to you for doing this, because you're diving into unknown territory, dealing with the technology while you're all home working, and developing this curriculum and dealing with the different age groups and trying to figure out where to go and how to do it. And I think it's just incredibly powerful that you guys are having these conversations with the kids in a safe space where they're able to express their thoughts. And with Lisa, your comment about talking about with the police departments is the first one that comes to mind, and have action come from those conversations. So I just want to say thank you guys for being bold and brave enough to take on this unknown challenge and doing so well. So I would really like to ask if we could have some sort of writing or something just from the students, just to kind of see, I'm fascinated to hear what they said about our meeting when we did the resolution. Yes. Honestly. That's just my idle curiosity, but if there's something that we could kind of see as a product from the students. I like hearing their quotes and what they're getting out of it as well, because I think that's incredibly powerful for them to say, this is what I'm learning and didn't know and didn't realize. So thank you.
Wonderful. Anybody else? My comment, I just really want to thank you, kind of build on the thank yous. I love, as Sharon had pointed out earlier, how practical you're making this. Having 2 Monomoy graduates, I know that age group, and I know the more you can make it real time and real world and practical, it really sinks in. And I really appreciate everything I've heard tonight, because it's real time examples with real people, real scenarios. So kudos to all of you. You're off to a fantastic start. And thank you very much. Any closing comments from anybody?
Hey, Tina, can I just say a few words in closing, if that's okay with you?
Yes, please.
Okay. I think that this is a great example of the progressive district and school that we are all, I think, a proud part of. And we have never been really afraid to take risks, and we certainly don't shy away from difficult conversations. And I think that this is a great example of how, as a district and a high school, we continue to evolve. I think, and I hope that you've seen tonight that we are essentially building, I think, a platform to take this from a programmatic standpoint from 2020 and beyond. And this certainly is not going to be a one-hit wonder or a train and hope method. I think this is something that we hope to embed in the future as well. So thank you to Matt, Lisa, George, and thank you. It was great.
Thank you very, very much. Superintendent, any comments from you?
So I can just.
And Rich, of course.
I can chime in from a parent standpoint instead of a superintendent standpoint. Just having some of the dinner conversations about the class itself. I appreciate that it is a 7th course, that it's that it's something that has meat, that that is challenging, that's challenging their own thinking, and I believe we have I've gotten to listen to different little writings that have been done for Lisa's class, and just see also the pride that students are taking in I think because there's meat and rigor, there's pride that goes along with it. So I greatly appreciate that it's not just this fluff thing that happened because I know from with Jen and I wanted to make sure that we had a 7-block schedule, that we needed to go figure out some way to end up with a 7-block schedule at the end of this and have something that addresses what we were seeing happening in society around us this summer, and it was thrown on 4 people quite literally at the last minute and said, hey, we need you to go and sort of run with this. And I know Jen and Dave Alexander and I sort of tried to give it some parameters, but I've been really appreciative of what the 4 of you have been doing, and how you each bring your own little twist to the topic. I like that autonomy and individuality that comes there. It's a nice job.
Thank you all. Really terrific job. Bravo, bravo, wonderful. Thank you. Yay.
Thank you. Have a good night, everybody. Stay safe.
Thank you. Good night to all of you. Everybody else stay. Okay. All right, under reports and discussions, school committee goals. So here is our second draft, Joanne. So take a look, any comments, questions? Did we capture all of the edits, questions that we had last meeting? Anybody in the Zoom room, comments, questions? Go ahead,
Tina,
Sharon.
I didn't hear, what is it that you're asking about?
This is the school committee goals. Any comments, questions? Did we capture all the edits? Any things that we needed to clean up from last time? Are we good? Terry.
Pardon my absence of last 2 weeks ago. The action steps under goal number 1 about the regional agreement. The school committee will establish, organize, and lead a visioning session and/or community forum that includes a representative group of stakeholders from Chatham and House to discuss an elementary developmental learning program.
Okay, you have a
Would
question about?
someone
Yep.
walk me through that?
Yes, Nancy, would you like to take that lead?
Darn it. Yeah, so this kind of stems back from conversations that were had last spring regarding most specifically the population in Chatham and Harwich, the discrepancies. And instead of doing it from a budgetary financial process, which is what step B is, or action step B, dealing more on the financial aspect, I felt, and apparently everybody else kind of agreed since it's now one of our goals, that we need to kind of have a continued discussion with others in our two towns surrounding our elementary schools and what the future is going to look like for them. You know, are we going to, be frank, I guess, are we ultimately going to allow Chatham Elementary to have one classroom per grade stay in that building? Or are we going to try to look and do something else? And in order to start that conversation, to me, it needs to be a community conversation, not just a school committee conversation. So that's where that kind of stemmed from. The developmental, the last sentence that's kind of Dr. Carpenter's twist on pulling it away from a financial aspect to more of looking at the bigger picture of what the elementary school's learning program will look like in the future, and to start that conversation. Does that make sense?
Yes, thanks, Nancy. Just to follow up on that, if that is, I see it as a huge task and one that clearly needs to be addressed. If you jump up one action step on B, establish a working group and hold a meeting early in the budget process to discuss regional assessment at the elementary level. Monomoy Regional School Committee members, superintendent, business manager, representative from both Board of Selectmen and town managers. I agree with that goal also. However, I think there's a step that needs to be taken, and I don't know whether it's a 6-month step or next year after that meeting, because I see that as a major meeting to come to a resolution, and it may take many meetings. So I don't know if the B and C are parallel to each other.
More or less, I would say, yes.
It's the first time I've actually read this, so it just conjures in my mind some potentially serious issues we're getting into. Balancing two groups that we're meeting with, so whether or not it means we meet simultaneously, or we take B first to see if we get some sort of unanimity amongst those who are the so-called leaders in both towns, and then move on. I don't know, because it's a fresh look. However, not that either B and C are clearly necessary, so.
Okay, Nancy?
Just to kind of get a little bit more of a background, action step B is more pressing because of conversations that came up last spring regarding our budget and regarding the equity in terms of the budgeting between the two elementary schools. So that one is almost it's a more pressing issue to have that conversation sooner than later, starting in the budget process. And then from that conversation will come out of where we want to start looking to head and options we can take. So yes, they're kind of you start out with B, figure out where that's going to end up and how that's going to go with the town's representatives, the selectmen and any town managers that want to be there. And then from that, it'll kind of fall into a greater conversation in my mind.
I like your thinking.
Idyllic mind.
I agree with that logic.
Okay, great. Jackie, did you have a comment? I thought I saw your hand. Anybody else? Joe?
Let's see if I'm unmuted. Looks like I am. Okay. A couple grammar type points, but I'll save those for a little later. I was just curious about item 2, letter B. There's a date of reviewing documents to be completed by January 14th, 2021. Is that date still in the goals? And it struck me as somewhat early. Is there a compelling reason for that particular date? I'm happy to be convinced.
Not really, to be honest, Joe. I think we kind of
Otherwise,
came...
it strikes me as early.
Okay, yeah, we're open to that. I think we were just coming up with a date because 2 weeks ago, we felt that it was necessary to put dates on a lot of these things. And so that just kind of looking at a calendar is kind of a date we came up with, but we're certainly open to another idea on a date. Do you have one? It sounds like it's too early.
Yeah, I would, since it's to review documents and then refers to information garnered through further education, between now and the first meeting in January, I know of at least one instance of possible education at the MASC conference. Dr. Carpenter has referred to another possibility with an educational organization with which he is familiar and with which he has done work. But then by January, we're also doing a number of things. We have a red line version to submit to town clerks. There's just a number of things we're trying to do by November, December, and then to have this done in January. I just don't see we have a lot of basis for discussion. I would move it more to the winter of 2021 and not specify a date or specify it later on. I think it's important to have a kind of placeholder here so we don't lose it, but a specific date unless it's centered on a particular event. You know, if we were all attending a workshop on January 10th, then we could have a discussion on our meeting on the 14th. But otherwise, I would just keep it a little more open and say the winter. But again, I'm open to other suggestions as well.
Okay. The only thing, Joe, oh, hold on one second. The only thing, Joe, with a winter is you're moving into a new school committee with a new set of goals. So my comment would be if we wanted to extend it, it's fine. I'd probably ride it until late spring. That would be my suggestion, if we're going to change the date.
I thought he meant winter 2021. That's
Yeah, but we're still going to be in a different school committee.
next January, February, March.
Oh, okay, I'm already jumping ahead to the next winter. Okay, sorry. Sorry.
Slow down. So, did we sleep through 2021 too?
Sorry about that, Joe. I'm so in the vision. Okay. All right, that makes sense then. So winter completed by, or we'll just change that to what?
I think winter's appropriate. Just winter
Okay.
2021.
In the winter of, well, maybe, we don't, based on the temperature today, I don't know. Okay, so we'll change that, Joe, to be completed in the winter of 2021. Go ahead, Joe, you have your hand up?
Thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to talk about a little grammar and parallelism, if I could.
Okay, go ahead.
Even with
You have the mic, go ahead.
Even with the smirk I see on the face of Ms. McGuire, and whose face is just wonderful to see again, since I'm no longer on policy committee. By parallelism, if you notice 1, 2, and 3 all begin with verbs, and number 4 should do that as well. I think it could be review superintendent evaluation procedure, because that way you're starting each item with the same grammar format. So if you just, I think you just add a verb and a noun, a verb at the beginning, noun at the end, review superintendent evaluation procedures. And then number 2, letter B, we could add MASC in front of anti-racism resolution. That balances MRSC. And then a capital S on statement, because statement was actually part of the title.
Okay.
So it should be the capital S, and then.
Hey, Joe, if we can, hey, Joe, if you could.
I'll stop here, I guess.
Yes, because we're trying to keep up with you. All right, so MRSC statement with a capital S. And there was something you said before that. What did you say before that?
So for 2B, review documents on MASC anti-racism resolution and MRSC statement, capital S.
Okay.
So those were the 2 changes there. And then since we're not putting a period at the end of these items, you have to omit it from 1C.
All right. So is that it then?
And
Oh, go
no,
ahead.
I'm just going to ignore all the capitalization stuff because I'd like Ms. Sheehan to have something to do here as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
All right, I'm coming over to your house and you're gonna tell me where to put.
Yeah, we'll tidy this up a little bit more. Anybody else? Sharon, did you have a question?
We can't follow that.
Was there any, did we capture, other than these edits, anything else? So just a few edits, and then we did change the timing under number 2 in the winter of 2021, now that I know when it is. I think it's, yeah, so I think we're good. Can we approve this tonight with the edits that have been put
I
forward?
think so.
Would that be okay?
Yeah.
All right, so if I could have, I guess, yeah, we got a potential, do we have a, yeah. So let's have a vote to approve this. So can
So
somebody make the motion?
I move to approve the Monomoy Regional School Committee goals for 2020 through 2021.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
All right, Meredith seconded, so we will, any discussion, any more discussion?
Does our motion need to include with edits?
Probably, yes.
I amend my, or I would like my motion to say that the approval is with the edits from Joe.
You're going to be in the motion, Joe. All right, so we're going to approve with edits. Meredith, you're still okay with your second?
Yeah.
And no discussion? Looks, all right, so we're going to take a roll call vote to approve with edits. Sharon? Was that an aye? Okay. Joe?
Joe Osiello, aye.
Thank you. Jackie?
Aye.
Meredith?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
Terry?
Aye.
Joanne? Aye. And I'm an aye. So this will pass. And then we've got a couple of that we'll need to move quickly on, so I will follow up, because there's one that needs to move fairly quickly. Okay, wonderful. So we're going to move on to the next item, which is the Massachusetts Association of School Committees, the MASC Resolution on the MCAS and high-stakes testing. So in your packet is a resolution that was brought forward by Sharon for review. Scott and I both reviewed this, and Scott added, put some edits. I think yours are in red. Is that right, Scott? Yours are in red.
Yes, so in the writing in black is the MASC resolution that Sharon forwarded to me, and I fully support it. I went and made some slight tweaks to it. The gist of this resolution is that the state is pushing to have the students that would have been sophomores last year take the MCAS this year as a high-stakes test, which if they don't pass it this year, they have a limited window to pass before potentially a diploma gets withheld for not passing the MCAS. And so that's the gist of it. There are two little sort of things that I wanted to just add to the resolution for clarity. And the first is in on the second whereas. It initially read that whereas the COVID-19 remote learning model has negatively and disproportionately affected students with learning disabilities, lower income status, EL students, and students who identify as minorities. The reality is it negatively impacted all students, and it also disproportionately impacted all of those other groups. So I just felt it's important to acknowledge that piece. The second substantive thing that I added on here, and I borrowed from what the Sandwich School Committee had done, is this the last sort of sentence in red that gets at recommending that the school committee not only reject high-stakes testing for this year, but also reject MCAS testing, period, for this year at all grade levels. I mean, we're in a process of doing catch-up for what was lost learning time last year. I think we don't need to go and compound lost learning time. And I am somebody who is actually a proponent of the concept of MCAS, but I do think that there's a time and place for it. I think at the moment we need to kind of get the whole educational system back on track, and then we can talk MCAS once again.
Okay, thank you. Any comments, discussion? And I think because it's a resolution, I think it has to come back, right, for a vote? Do we have to officially do this? So this would be a first read, basically.
We can vote on it tonight.
Do you want to vote on it tonight? Does everybody feel comfortable with that? All right, anyone, okay, everybody good? I see nods. All right, well, let's have a motion then.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I move to approve the resolution MCAS and high-stakes testing as presented.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
All right, Jackie seconded. Any more discussion before we take a vote? All right, seeing none, we will start in the Zoom room. So Sharon, we are voting to approve this resolution.
Aye.
Thank you. Joe?
Joe Osceola, aye.
Thank you. Jackie?
Aye.
Meredith?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
Terry?
Aye.
Joanne? Aye. And I'm an aye. So that will be approved unanimously. Wonderful. All right, so the next item of business is the MASC annual meeting, and everybody in their packet. It finally opened up on the website. Lee and I have been stalking the website, and it finally opened up today. So Leah went ahead and registered, because it is free, registered everyone. If you can't attend, just let Leah know so we can take you off the list. But she went ahead and, I think, registered everyone. But you've got a schedule in your packet. It's on Saturday, September 7th. And the big highlight for this, and the reason we were looking at it, is the featured presentation, because it is aligned with what we've agreed to do through the resolution that we adopted. So that's on there. And it starts at 9:45. It's all virtual, and everybody's registered. And then afterwards, the delegate assembly, I am the official delegate, so not everybody has to go unless you want to. But I'm the official delegate, and Joanne is the alternate. So I will attend, and anybody else who might want to attend the afternoon portion, which is on the back side. So you're welcome to go all day, but definitely the first part, and in particular, the featured presentation. Any questions? Okay, seeing none. All right, we're moving right along, folks. Good. Subcommittee reports. First reading, superintendent goals. Joe, I'll toss this over to you to open us up.
Okay, thank you. We are giving our first reading of the Superintendent Evaluation Subcommittee and Superintendent Goals. All of that information should be in your packet, so we won't read them. Page by page, item by item. They're also available to the public online. I would say first, though, the members of the Superintendent Evaluation Subcommittee are Mr. Terry Russell, Ms. Joanne Sheehan, and Ms. Sharon Stout, as well as myself. The first point that needs to be made, of course, is that this is probably the most significant way in which the public has a say in how the educational goals and plans of the school district is run. We don't oversee day-to-day operations. We don't review lesson plans or anything of that sort. We don't micromanage at all. But the superintendent brings his, in this case I'm going to say he and his, but he brings his plans to the public, and the public has a chance to read and comment, either through the discussion or largely through the people that the public has elected to represent them, which is the school committee. So a couple things very quickly on the goals. Actually, I have 3 points I want to make, if I can do them some speed. First, it's very important to consider what is not here. What is not in these goals, I think needs to be said. And you got a flavor of it from the presentation we heard earlier today from 4 experienced staff members at the high school. What is not here is the correction of direction and course. We're not tacking in a new way. We're not having to recover lost ground or rectify errors in strategy and planning. Because when this pandemic did hit us in the winter and spring of 2020, the district was as prepared as any district could be. The administrative team was as prepared and directed and focused as anyone could be. And I believe that it's fair to say the staff rose to the challenges that were presented to them. So we are not now trying to prevent new problems or make up lost territory. We're not in that situation, and it shouldn't be taken for granted. A number of districts are simply having to try to refocus their program. We're not in that position. I would be hesitant to say we're in a good place because that can be misunderstood. But given the hardships, we're in as good a place, I think, as we can hope to be. So that's the first thing to say about the goals. And I think that's a highly commendable point on the administrative team and the superintendent in particular. Second, really there are 2 pillars here. One is the strategic plan is embedded in the concept of the goals as it should be, and it's properly done. And the final point is that there are things have happened since the strategic plan. Since the COVID pandemic, all has changed utterly. And that change is reflected in the superintendent goals as well. And again, I think properly done. And that should be clear even just glancing at this, but it certainly is worth reading with some care, as I hope we've all done. So I would point out that in the way our subcommittee worked, the superintendent initiated the goals, we discussed them, they were fine-tuned. It's the consensus of the subcommittee that these are goals that should be adopted. We hope that the full committee will agree and adopt these at the appropriate time. And I just want to thank the superintendent for the work that he's put in on this, and my colleagues as well, of course.
All right, thank you, Joe. Any comments or questions? Superintendent?
Yeah, I guess if I was to tag on to at least some of the words that Joe used, what's not in the goals is, there's not a goal on how do we manage COVID crisis. And one of the things I have been going around and, getting to meet with each of the building level administrative teams, and I have this. I've been setting up with the teams. Let's have a standing monthly meeting to talk about school improvement and where we want to see things on the other side of this pandemic, because this too shall pass. And what I don't want to see is myself or this district just lose itself and lose an entire year just jumping from one crisis to the next crisis to the next crisis, which we're going to have situations where an individual is positive here and positive there, and it's easy for that to just become the only thing that you're focused on. And again, I don't want to see us lose a year in terms of moving forward anything. So just in general, the themes here in the goals, there's 5 of them. The professional practice goals, deal with continuing that conversations with the superintendent, and I anticipate leveraging, Zoom rooms and Google Meet to to get many voices in. But I also want to make sure that that I'm doing that with staff as well. I want to acknowledge that we have new principals, and I want to make sure that we are driving appropriate mentorship with the new principals, and not just new principals, but new principal teams. So I've been, what I've been doing is I've I've been sitting down earlier this week with Mary and Sharon and said, let's go sit down as a team and talk about where do we want Harwich Elementary School to be on the other side of this, and then with Jen and Dave Alexander, and again say, let's go look at this over the course of this year and start looking beyond COVID. Where do we want to take things? The student learning goal is probably the only thing that even smacks of COVID, but if anything, it's looking at what can we learn from this, that there are some things that, some successes that are happening out there, and some challenges too. Little snippets that we can bring up is, I was looking with Mark Smith and Jen at just the grades that are happening at the high school, looking at the kids that are in here 2 out of 3 days, and the kids, there's a quarter of the kids are at home all the time doing remote learning. And my bias is I thought for sure that we were going to see the kids that were at home, that they would be underperforming relative to the kids that are in the classroom. And what we're seeing is that that the grades are quite comparable between the two groups, so that there's something going well for a set of kids. And I fully acknowledge that that they're probably not two homogeneous groups, that there may be some selection in terms of who's at home, but clearly that type of learning style can benefit some learners. And I think that we need to kind of think about, when we're on the other side of this, how can we go and keep capturing some of the magic that's going on there. And then the last two deal with district improvement. One is making sure that we're moving along the strategic plan, and the other is that we're specifically moving along that the school committee resolution on racism, race, and education. And I think you saw a piece of what we were trying to push forward on that end, which is provide and drive a lot of resources towards for people who are sort of thrown into a curriculum, and try to steer for very strong educators with very different ways that they go about things, and say, okay, how can we come up with moving this forward, and again start thinking about when we're on the other side of this pandemic and we're back in here together, how can we go and launch from that and really take it to the next level? And I think, again, create a curriculum that leads to positive change. And I think that's the important thing there. So that's the goals in a nutshell.
All right, wonderful. Questions? Comments? Anybody? Oh, Jackie.
I'm going to lift this up a little bit, unless you guys can hear me well. Yeah?
We can. I guess it just depends.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Can everybody hear Jackie? Okay, good.
I really like these goals. I feel like they are just realistic, tangible, practical goals. Nothing's lost in translation in them. They're not gooped up with a bunch of stuff. I just wanted to share that. I just really like them. They're very wholesome. I do have a couple edits. On page 1 under rationale, second sentence, the hope is that parent meetings, should it be plural with an S?
It should be.
Okay. Page 2,
Under supports resources needed from district, superintendent will be allocating time, get rid of the 2, for monthly meetings? See that?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Page 3, under rationale, second sentence, halfway through, learn from distance learning that might make, is it our in-person learning?
Yep.
And page 5, under rationale, last sentence, halfway through, under, let's see, and to support students and staff in making the changes for our schools, get rid of need. And that's all I've got. Joe, how'd I do?
Joe, were you
Great, but
impressed?
we could have needed changes. I think that's what was intended.
Or that's fine too, it just didn't make sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
To support students and staff in making the needed changes?
Yeah.
So needed,
Got it.
needed. Great, thank you guys, great work.
I think.
I missed one?
Hold on one second. Leah, had a question. Can you, what do you need, Leah?
I just was asking where she was reading. I missed the last edit.
Oh, the
I have
last edit, what was your last one?
It's on
Jackie?
Page
the
5.
last sentence in rationale.
Okay.
And the first word in that sentence is need, and it should be needed. Page 5,
Okay.
rationale, last sentence.
And making the needed changes, okay. All right. I'm sorry, what?
I think that she made that.
Okay, so we'll get that cleaned up.
We'll find it.
Anybody else? Did you get, Leah, are you good? Okay. Anybody else? So I just wanted to say that I agree with Jackie. I think these are just some really terrific goals. And goal number 1, I love the fact that it says, or in conjunction with the school committee. I think that's exciting that there's that possibility. I've attended all of the conversations with superintendent except one, and they have been so well attended, and so I do hope going forward, when we do move out of COVID, that we do keep the remote possibility, because I know there was one that was maxed out, and it was like at 250, and people were still trying to get in, and so I just loved that. So I wanted to comment there, and then the other thing I just wanted to say, under district improvement goal number 2 on page 5, Superintendent, thank you very, very much for your commitment and your partnership with the school committee, because this, just reading this shows me your commitment and what we witnessed tonight, and I just want to thank you very much for partnering with us on this, and just wanted to say that too. All right, Nancy.
I'm going to echo both Jackie and your thoughts, Tina, that I think these goals are excellent, where they pull us away from the COVID world. And remember that we are an educational institution, and we have to look beyond the crisis, and you have to educate the kids, and we have to move forward with that. And I really, really appreciate the professional practice goal too, with the mentorship of the principals, because I think it's so easy to get swept up in the day-to-day crises, that it's very powerful for them to create that vision of what they would like to see, especially at the middle school and the high school with the new principals there. Well, we had 2 fantastic principals at the middle school and the high school over the past several years. Having them, the new bodies come in, even though they were in the buildings before, but they have their own direction that they're going to want to see those buildings go. So I really appreciate you encouraging that, and to get out of the COVID world and just look forward and say, what do you want to see these schools do? Even though it's going to look different for a little while, but at some point we're going to go back to normal. It's going to happen. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
To share one
Yes.
little piece of flavor of the conversation, and Mary was in one of these. I've talked with our assistant principals that I will not hire an assistant principal if I can't see them as a principal one day. And, I've encouraged each of them, to, as we're having these conversations about school improvement and where we want to see the building going, that I expect that each one of them has a piece of that they own, that, that can be theirs, that down the road they can go back and say, here's my documentation on what I've done to move this forward, that it's not just Mary moving Harwich Elementary school forward, but it's Sharon has her piece of that that she can completely own in moving it. And again, but I think it's important in terms of supporting the growth of really strong assistant principals so that one day they're ready.
Great.
That's
Thank
great.
you.
Thank
Any
you.
other comments, questions? All right, so this is a first read, coming back to the next meeting on November 5th for a second reading and a vote. All right, next item under subcommittee reports is our school attorney policy. And Sharon or Jackie, do one of you want to kickstart us? Sharon, go ahead.
As chair of the subcommittee, the one about the school attorney is very simple. The only thing that we modified at all on this was to put the word will in. The committee will retain an attorney.
All right, thank you, Sharon.
Clearly, in this day and age, we all need an attorney available. The other one.
Oh, actually, before you move there, hold on one quick second. Let's just stay on this school attorney one for a moment. Any questions, comments, discussions? Joe? Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, I would put back some language that says the superintendent may not engage with the school attorney or the attorney's law firm to represent him against the school committee itself if litigation were to occur.
Oh, okay.
That is, if we were one of these towns or districts that are having conflicts with the superintendent may very well seek the advice and hire counsel and so forth, which he's entitled to do. But the attorney, the educational attorney that the superintendent hires should not be the attorney that the school committee has sought out for the providing legal services. So it shouldn't be that in other words, it shouldn't be, the superintendent shouldn't access our attorney or our attorney's law firm.
Okay, Jackie?
I would just say adding that. I'm just in favor of adding it. I'll vote for this in any case, but I would like to see that added.
All right, thank you. Jackie?
Before I go to that, the second paragraph, someone can read through it. And the superintendent on specific legal problems submitted to him, shouldn't it be him or her or he, she? Just be
Yeah,
keeping it
that's a good point, Jackie, because it could always change.
I mean, it's a him now, but.
So Jackie's saying in paragraph 2, the superintendent on the specific legal problems submitted to him or her.
Or he or she.
Or he or she, well, to him or her.
And then, because then the next one starts, he, she will attend meetings upon request. So I was just trying to keep it consistent.
Yep.
And I just didn't pick up on that. Although down here we use him and her. So I think we just need to pick which one.
Yep.
And make sure those are all fixed. And then regarding Joe's comment, I understand exactly what he's saying. And I'm wondering if he does not feel that the line stating the superintendent may also take such action at the discretion of the committee, the action he would be taking would be seeking legal advice or assistance. So he needs, it's at the direction of the committee. So we're already saying that he needs direction of the committee to seek legal advice from this team. So does that work?
I think Joe, go ahead, Joe.
But then I know the second paragraph.
I think that's the purpose. I believe the language here is retaining some of the original policy, which was to prevent people from just calling attorneys at wills, and then suddenly the district is confronted with a rather hefty fee. So there's a kind of check on who does what, and at the same time allowing flexibility for the chair and the superintendent to act quickly if there's an issue that comes up in which a time deadline or a time frame is required for us to act. So that's what that's what I think the language was reflecting. I would, maybe if I make it as maybe I make a motion to amend to amend our the school attorney policy. I think we can do it in a sentence, and then we can discuss it or vote it up and down. So I would say let's include the following, and I'd make that as a motion if anyone wishes to second. But here's the sentence. The attorney or law firm retained by MRSC will not represent the superintendent in negotiations with the school committee. So it certainly is consistent with what's in that third paragraph. It just adds a sentence of specification, so there's no wrangling over any potential ambiguity. I'll read it again. The attorney or law firm retained by the MRSC will not represent the superintendent in negotiations with the school committee or MRSC.
Shouldn't that say personal?
So I'm presenting that as a motion if anyone would.
Okay, so hold one, let me, all right, you've already made the motion, so, I guess following procedure, do I have a second on Joe's motion? And then I'll take the question. All right, so Nancy's going to second it, and we're going to open it up for discussion. Jackie?
I'm wondering if it should say personal negotiation, because when you say negotiation, that also could imply you're talking about negotiations with the school, with teachers, with Mr. Alciello. You there?
Joe, could you hear Jackie? Okay.
Yeah, I think you're saying, can you add the word personal negotiations with MRSC?
I mean, if you feel the whole sentence is necessary.
We could say contractual negotiations, personal and contractual negotiations. I'm okay with the addition.
Okay. Can we read that, just so we're all clear, can we read what you and Joe have just said?
Yeah. Leah, can you read that back?
Leah, did you get it?
And I was looking for clarification as well, but this is what I have. Joe, can you hear me okay? The attorney
Loud and clear. Thank you, Leah.
Okay, the attorney or law firm retained by the MRSC will not represent the superintendent in personal or contractual negotiations with the MRSC.
Does that make
Direct,
sense?
maybe it should be direct with, or, I don't know. This,
Joe, how did that sound? Jackie, it sounds like Jackie's got a question.
I don't know what I have.
All right, so I'm going to move to Terry. Go ahead, Terry.
I don't think the motion is necessary at all. The experience I've had on the board for the last 10 years, the first sentence speaks for itself. The school committee will retain an attorney. Once you do that, the business of the school committee cannot be conflicted with the individual business of the superintendent of schools, no matter who it is. It's self-evident, and that's why, in my experience, we've never seen that even come up. If an individual issue came up independent of our retention of the attorney, the superintendent would retain his or her own attorney. I don't think it's necessary to write that.
Okay, thank you. Joanne?
When you get into the negotiations, Joe, I didn't think that's what you were aiming at with your, when you went back to apparently the original proposal. It had nothing to do with negotiations. Wasn't it more the superintendent can't pick up the phone and deal with the school committee's attorney without the permission of the school committee?
If I may, can I?
Yes, go ahead, Joe. Yes.
I think that's what Jackie clarified in personal. We also are trying to be careful because in districts all around the Commonwealth, school committees dismiss superintendents, and this is something that sometimes this issue of the superintendent contacting the attorney or law firm that is employed by the school committee has come up. Of course, the superintendent is paying out of his own pocket, but a sentence simply makes it very clear so that there's no misunderstanding that if we were like, I don't know, Sharon, Mass, that is in the process of removing its superintendent, if we were in that situation, then we would want to make the lines as clear as possible so it wouldn't be tangled. I think it is implicit, but when you're dealing with things of this sort, in policy, in other words, I think it's better to add the sentence for clarity rather than not. We're not in this situation. We haven't been in this situation. We're not writing for necessarily today or tomorrow, but we're looking ahead a little bit and trying to write a policy that prepares us adequately for a number of eventualities, even if they're not the issues that confront us today.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Jackie?
In regards to Joe's motion, I just want to back up about 10 steps. I like the way it reads. That's why we're presenting it this way. I don't think it's necessary to put in restrictions, I guess is the best way to say it, as we're talking about. I feel like it would be a conflict of interest for counsel hired by the district to give personal legal advice to the superintendent, and they would know that. It's kind of common sense and legal sense. So I don't think that it really needs to be stated in the policy for that reason. You wouldn't be able to be represented and getting personal or private advice or legal advice from counsel for the school committee, about the school committee, from the school committee's hired counsel. So I think one undoes the other. And I also want to express that in the next paragraph, we're going to get into how the superintendent needs to have a little flexibility with contacting counsel without having it come to a meeting every 2 weeks for permission. There are definitely appropriate situations where we proceed with counsel, but in between that, there are conversations we do have with counsel leading up to preparing for a meeting where we potentially need to have an understanding of what that's going to look like. And often the superintendent has to move quickly and seek counsel before we meet. And I think a simple conversation with the chair is adequate.
All right, thank you. Any other comments? This is the motion that Joe has made. Yes, Superintendent?
I would just have a couple. I'd have a couple friendly amendments, just in terms of how the district does operate. The first is, in the first sentence, I would, my friendly recommendation would be that it lists attorneys and law firms, because you actually have, as a school district, this school district has one attorney that it uses for general labor practice, that's Mark Terry, out of Merrick-O'Connell, and it has its own special ed attorney. So you actually have two different firms and two different attorneys that the committee has hired. I'm a little worried in terms of practice that I think it should state that the superintendent, in the first sentence of the second paragraph, that the superintendent or designee on specific legal problems. And the designee, I would say, when it comes to special education, tends to be Melissa. And I think that the combination of Melissa and I are frequently reaching out to attorneys for the district. Occasionally, when it deals with a business matter, like the solar panels on the high school roof, I was having Michael reach out to a specific contract lawyer within Merrick-O'Connell. So I think there's, the wording, I'm just a little worried, just says superintendent, 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 and designee is important. And I also want to just take a moment and remind everyone out there, and I believe this is still quite true, that legal expenses, so long as Melissa has been here with our team, are much less than the legal expenses that used to be in our, before Melissa and I came here. I think, we do reach out on behalf of the district to our attorneys, but don't do this frivolously. And I think, again, it's a lot of the competence that Melissa has when it comes to special education law. Competent people don't need to constantly keep picking up the phone to say, is this right?
Okay. So you're recommending everywhere where it says superintendent to say superintendent or designee, everywhere that's written, is that correct?
Yeah, I think that as long as it just says it once, I think it's implied that from that point on. So I think if you go with the first superintendent or designee.
Okay.
And I think just to acknowledge that the school committee actually has more than one attorney it works with and more than one law firm that it works with to begin with.
Right, and then the 2 S's. Now, we do, just a reminder, we do have a motion on the floor, so we will have to take a vote on Joe's motion. Jackie?
I just want to go back. Scott, thank you so much for, thank you for the clarification. I had made the changes as he spoke to Tina, so I also have them.
Okay.
And I think what I understood was the committee will retain attorneys and law firms to provide additional legal services. And then I think everywhere it does say superintendent, it should say superintendent or designee.
Yeah.
I think it should repeat everywhere, so that it doesn't look like any particular situation a designee is not allowed to. So I've made the edits on my page that it says superintendent or designee everywhere it says that. And then I've also made edits anywhere it says him or him, her, it says he, she. And that's consistent through the document. And then we'll make that edit. And then I think we just need to go back to the motion.
Right.
Because now we're editing the document back the way it originally was.
Exactly.
So,
all right, so we have some minor edits on the floor, which I think most of us are good with that. But Joe has put a motion on the floor, Nancy seconded, with the addition of an extra line in paragraph 3. And Leah, could I ask you to read the line back to us again?
Certainly. So Joe's motion reads, the attorney or law firm, and I think that we would put plurals on those as well, retained by the MRSC will not represent the superintendent in personal and contractual negotiations with the MRSC.
Okay. So the motion is on the floor to approve this with the minor edits plus the addition of Joe's sentence. So we're going to take a vote on that. Oh, Jackie.
Well, the motion was for his sentence he added, not the minor edits.
Okay, all right. Okay, so it's just for the sentence, okay, so it's just.
For his first.
Okay, perfect, all right. Okay, so we're only voting just on Joe's sentence. All right, so Joe, we will start with you.
For the amended sentence, Joe Osceola, aye.
All right, thank you, Sharon. And you'll need to turn your camera on, Sharon.
I don't know what I did.
So it's right next to the mute button, Sharon. You turned your camera off.
Oh. Now I don't know where anything is.
Okay, so, but we can hear you, and it is audible, if I'm remembering, but I think that
So,
is.
I guess I vote aye too.
Okay, so we have 2 ayes. Jackie?
no.
Okay, Meredith?
No.
Nancy?
No.
Terry?
No.
Joanne?
No.
And I'm a no. So that's 2 ayes and 6 noes. So the motion fails. So now we're back to looking at the policy with the edits. Nancy?
I had a couple of questions. The 3rd paragraph, a decision to seek legal advice or assistance on behalf of the school system will be made by the committee. So when it says the assistance on behalf of the school system, are we referring to if the committee needs legal advice as well? So the school committee is a part of the school system? Is that?
Jackie, can you refresh my memory? So on paragraph 3, a decision to seek legal advice or assistance on behalf of the school system, because when we were discussing this, we were going back to the open meeting law
That's
violation.
exactly where I'm
Right, yes.
going with.
Jackie, do you recall?
And then for the second sentence, Nancy says, the superintendent or designee may also take such action at the discretion of the committee. So when we had the open meeting law violation, basically, we needed to have a conversation to figure out what the action was, so that we could bring it, put on the agenda appropriately, and bring it to the committee appropriately, and legally, and then be permitted to proceed with the actual legal action as advised by the law firm. So, I hope that wasn't too muddled, and maybe Terry's gonna clarify that, but there's times where you actually have to gather your data and then get approval to move forward. So I think that's what we were trying to get at with that, with those two sentences.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yes, and I don't think it's very clear.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's where I
We were
was.
jammed.
Because
Yeah.
I was actually reflecting back to that as well, and
Right.
wondering if there's a better way to state it, and I don't know what it is.
Yeah. Before I call in Terry, but I think you make a good point, Nancy, and I just want to clarify. A decision to seek legal advice or assistance on behalf of the school system. So thinking back to that open meeting law, was that on behalf of the school system, or was it on behalf of the committee? So I think those words are a little, I don't know. Jackie?
My suggestion is that, instead of wordsmithing tonight, that we take under advisement that needs to be better clarified, and we take that back to the policy subcommittee.
'Cause I think it's important for that specific situation, if it ever arises again,
Yep.
that we have, or the chair has that ability. I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I just
Yeah, go
jumped
ahead.
in. The chair has the ability that if a violation happens, the chair needs to be able to contact the attorney to say, hey, what do I do?
Right.
Because not every
Right.
chair is going to have experience with that, so.
Exactly. Okay.
Without having a meeting.
Right. Terry?
I agree with looking at this wording, and I want to echo something Jackie said, and it's just past experience. In the day-to-day activity of a superintendent's operation, that third sentence, a decision to seek legal advice or assistance on behalf of the schools will be made by the committee. Frankly, that happens when the superintendent calls, not the committee. Now, the superintendent may call the chair and say, something's come up. I think we need to give a call to our da-da. That, to me, is the appropriate practical way that I think these things happen. Every once in a while, I can't foresee the superintendent coming to a school committee meeting saying, this occurred 5 days ago, and I need your permission to call to seek advice. That for what we have going, that's not practical. So I think that third sentence should be polished to state, will be made by the superintendent in consultation with the chair of the school committee. And the consultation could be a phone call after or before. So that's my suggestion.
Okay. Jackie? And then Joanne?
So Terry, for clarification, is it the fourth paragraph that you want further clarification? Or maybe we take the second and, we take the third and fourth paragraph and make that just more clarifying as far as the action steps?
Yes. I actually have not carefully read the fourth and final paragraph.
Okay,
The third short paragraph, I think, speaks to how does this whole thing start and get initiated, and I think
okay,
that could be just understood to mean that the superintendent contacts, in behalf of the committee, the legal authority in consultation with the chair.
okay. So I think we take that back to the committee.
Okay, yeah. Joanne?
Mine's just a quick grammar. In your fourth paragraph, you get to the end of the first sentence, prior notice, that's a semicolon. However, it's a lowercase and then a comma.
All
So
right.
that means it's an if-then.
Did you get that, Jackie?
I have never felt like I'm in an English class more so than I have tonight.
Isn't it fun?
No, I like numbers.
All right, great. Sharon and then Joe.
So I'm wondering if it might be helpful to have some examples of what is typical. Because negotiations is typical, you have behavior disorder situations, there's a whole lot. Or you could just say special needs, staff issues. I mean, I do support what Terry said about notifying the chair, but this has been practiced for decades, that a special needs director and a superintendent would be able to, as they saw fit, contact an attorney. And when I worked in the Chatham system, the special ed director would have me or some other people occasionally, if we were working in a certain situation, talk with the attorney. So I do think it's unrealistic for the school system to be contacting us, certainly not the whole committee at least. But I don't even know for everything that happens, if even the chair should need to be contacted.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. Joe?
On the third paragraph, I would just point out that it's the standard legal language, I think, that's taken out of the legal references cited at the bottom of the page, and you'll find that paragraph in school committee BDG policies all over the Commonwealth. It's just the Commonwealth language that's there. There's nothing particularly unusual or controversial about it. It's quite standard. The proposal as a whole, or the policy as a whole, I think strikes a good balance. The superintendent is not restricted, is certainly able to act in unusual situations, emergency situations. Superintendent is able to act and contact an attorney should a member of the public file or give a notice that they're going to file a complaint about open meeting law, because the fourth paragraph says that the superintendent can take action, can initiate action, and then subsequently inform the school committee, and at that point we have permission and approval, and we go forward in a way that's sensible and timely. So taken together, all the paragraphs do blend into some real harmony, and I think we can keep the third paragraph as it is, because frankly that is what the law states.
All right, thank you. Anything else? All right, so I guess I thought this would be smooth sailing, but I guess it's not quite. So we'll take it back and clean it up and bring it back to November 5th meeting for a second read, okay? All right, so we'll return on the 5th for second read.
First.
Oh, first read. Oh, okay, well, all right. So you think it was more than just minor edits? Okay. So
Those are
first read again.
Substantial changes.
All right. So it'll return for a first read. Okay. All right. Moving on to our next first read for the fourth or fifth time is our policy file BE school committee meetings. Sharon or Jackie, who would like to take the lead?
I will.
Go ahead, Sharon.
So I really do appreciate all the comments on the last one. On this one, since we've seen it several times, I'll just go over what changes. On page 3, we're not posting any of the postings at the town halls anymore. We're doing that on the school district website. That's all that says. On the page 4, if the public has a question about an upcoming agenda item, they can contact either the chair or of the school committee or the superintendent of schools. On page 5, instead of 2 public comment periods, we're having one, it doesn't say at the beginning or the end, of 15 minutes, and at the discretion of the chair, it could be extended. Any person wishing to speak will identify themselves by name and address and shall speak no longer than 3 minutes or at the discretion of the chair. All the references to citizens that we had in the last one have now been changed to person. And the 3 minutes and the 15 minutes can be extended at the discretion of the chair. Anyone can direct questions through the chair.
Or any committee member. Yeah.
The chair of the meeting, after warning, reserves the right to terminate speech which constitutes true threats that may provoke a violent reaction and cause a breach of peace or incitement to imminent lawless conduct or contains obscenities. And that's it. Those are the only changes we had.
Okay, so I'm going to go to Jackie first and then to Terry.
I just wanted to go back to page 5, number 1, and I just wanted to note that we did not change it to just one public comment section because there's been so much controversy, and in the interest of moving this policy forward, we have now put it as public comment shall be for a period of 15 minutes. At the discretion of the chair, the public comment period can be extended, period. Doesn't say 1, it doesn't say 2. It's just saying that we provide an opportunity for public comment during our meetings. And I'll give you a little background on that. What we've decided is that this is not at policy level. At policy level is that public comment is welcome and there's some structure for it. At agenda level is where we can discuss with the committee how we make that public comment look, whether we divide it into 2, not dividing 15 minutes, but whether we divide it into 2 or 1, which is what we have done in the past. We brought it back to the committee level, to the agenda format level, and I don't know if it was in the beginning or the middle of the year, and we voted at that point. Because at this point, it's just holding up this policy, and the more we looked at it, it was like, well, why do we have to outline it so detailed in the policy as long as public comment is provided, and then we can be more agenda specific. And we can vote on that as a committee.
Yes.
So that's kind of where that number 1 came from. So I just wanted to clarify. It's not 1, it's not 2. It's just saying there is an opportunity for public comment.
Okay, thank you. And Sharon, hold on 1 second. I'll get to you in 1 minute. Terry?
I couldn't hear a thing she said.
I don't know what it said.
That's all.
All right, so Sharon, what Jackie said was going back to page 5 on number 1, public comment. Jackie wanted to clarify for everyone that we did not agree that it was just one public comment. What we agreed was to just, the statement now would read, public comment shall be for a period of 15 minutes, period. At the discretion of the chair, the public comment period can be extended. We felt that that left kind of an opening from year to year at the discretion of the chair if they wanted to extend into 2 comment periods or keep it at 1 or extend the time. We felt like that left a little bit of an opening from year to year at the discretion of the chair. The public comment period can be extended.
Who is we? I'm not part of that, we.
Well, then we would be Jackie and myself. It was public. This is what we talked about during our policy subcommittee. Go ahead, Jackie. And then I got to come to Terry.
Tina, I just want to clarify that we're not saying that having 1 or 2 is at the discretion of the chair. We're saying that would be a committee vote.
Yes, it would be.
For the agenda.
I misspoke.
No, that's okay. I just want to clarify it.
Yes, thank you.
The discretion of the chair is the length of time that is extended and given to any one speaker.
Exactly. And I misspoke, and thank you for that. So that is exactly correct. And at the same time, we felt that the wording was still open enough that we could bring it back for the committee vote from year to year. Terry?
I sometimes feel, and I usually am able to attend meetings. A couple of weeks ago, I wasn't able to. Prior to that, we had a long hour discussion on this, and I'm feeling like Bill Murray in Groundhog Day.
Join the crowd.
I really think, folks, that we're skirting the issue. And nothing captures my logic more than our colleague, absentee citizen, Charles. We all received, I was going to say a missile, but I think it was more of a missive epistle from Charles that I fully agree with. And with the attempt of trying to be transparent, and I refer back to Scott's goal, the first one. He's not reducing his physical and intellectual signaling to the community. He's tripling it with 6 meetings. The logic of this past year of suggestion through Charles, and I think I made the motion, to have a second comment at the end of every meeting, I think is simple, stated, it's not cloudy. We, over the past year, with this pandemic or without it, have had no major issues. If anything, hardly ever is the public here. Therefore, I don't see any advantage to us to tighten it up to a discretion of this, from year to year, instead of just saying, we want to be as open as we can. You know, we've all run for election. Part of that is coming out for 2, 3, 4 hours and discussing school business. And because this is called the Monomoy Regional Public School System, I take a lot of thought in committing my minutes to being able to respond, even if there's no one here. And so I feel that a public comment in the beginning, 3 minutes, 5 we used to have, it hasn't been violated. And at the end of the meeting, if someone speaks up, that's good for us. Matter of fact, I'd go on to say that if one of us made a statement that a member of the public didn't understand it, I think every member here should be able to clarify what they believe is a good thing for the school system. So that's another side topic, but rather than, you know, we've never had so many returns to the policy committee, but I think we're kind of in the deep, deep weeds right at the moment, that I would suggest, because unless the members who changed this could come up with a rationale as to why, because remember last month we had 7 people, they went on, it got tiffy. That hasn't happened. So if we have it state a meeting comment, public comment in the beginning, public comment just the status quo that we've had for a year, and not make it year to year, because then someone has to bring it up, I think that's the way to go, especially in this era of no one able to get out of their homes. So I don't want to get too passionate about this because it's a minor point, but I fully agree with Charles's initial thought of doing this. I thought it was positive. It didn't really waste our time. And at the same time, to reserve and put it off, to me, is a signal that we're tightening up things when I don't think they have to. So that's my evening comment.
All right, thank you, Terry. Nancy?
So just my understanding was we're not changing anything. We're not looking to drop the second public comment period. That's on our agenda. That's what we're doing right now. This is only just a generic policy. So I think while you very eloquently stated your opinion, it has nothing to do with the policy, because the policy isn't necessarily reducing any public comment. And I actually look at it as not a year-to-year thing, because it's, like Jackie said, the discretion of the chair isn't to change what the public comment period is. This is our agenda. Our agenda format has 2 public comment periods on it. We're not changing our agenda format. We're not changing the policy to state we will have only 1 public comment period. It's only stating this is we will have a public comment period. And that's whether we have 5, we could have a public comment period after every discussion. It doesn't matter what the agenda is. The policy is stating that we will have one. It will be an option for people to speak, whether we have 5, 10, 15, 1 after every agenda item. That's a different conversation. So I think, and we're getting lost in the weeds of the policy, which is what the conversation was at the last meeting, is that we're going round and round about whether or not we want to have 2 public comment periods or 1 public comment period or 20 public comment periods. So just, we're gonna have a public comment period, and how many we have, it's kind of precedent right now that we have 2, and that's going to remain until something changes. And we added it by a vote of the school committee, and therefore I think it would need to be taken out by a vote of the school committee, not a vote of this policy. This policy is not reducing any public comment periods. So that was part of the conversation we had at our last meeting. Unfortunately, you missed.
Thank you. Terry?
I understand that. I disagree with it. I think it just muddies the water that doesn't have to be muddied. I would maintain that if you had in the past year, we voted to have a comment at every one of our evening meetings at the end. That becomes, and I don't want to dice and splice, well, that's not really policy. Yeah, I could argue it is. It's part of the policy of our school management at public meetings. So I don't want to belabor the point, but I would suggest we move this back to the policy committee to make a simple statement out of it. I don't argue that 15 minutes is the discretion of the superintendent, the chair, and so that could be diced into 3. No, just get back to where originally the idea was, to open comments for the public. And I don't see any reason why we would signal that it's somewhat a little bit in general, and each year we'll take a look at that. So,
All right, thank you. Joanne, please.
Just a quick one. This is for you, please. Number 3, at their discretion, it's hers. It's singular, so it's either her or his.
Ah.
Or you can do
The
his,
person,
her. I would just
or at her or his?
At her, yeah.
This would be
Number
page
3,
5.
at their discretion, it goes back to the presiding chair.
Page 5, number 3, Jackie, where it says the presiding chair may permit extension of this time limit at his or her discretion, rather than their.
It is consistent with your subject. I thought I would tell Nancy that, just so you know why. It's not a policy.
So I have that one. Go ahead, Sharon. Go ahead, Sharon.
I agree with everything that Terry said and not what Nancy said. I believe that the agenda of putting this wording in the way it is directly related to eliminating the second comment, period. So if it was to go this way, I would vote no.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Meredith?
So this is like the first reading, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so can I make a motion to move this with that one simple edit?
With what simple edit?
That his, her on,
Oh, as it is written right now?
mm-hmm.
Sure. I mean, can you? I guess, oh, no, actually,
We can't vote on it as a
it's a
first
first,
reading.
well, here's the thing, though. It's a first reading. My understanding of this, and Nancy, you're know more than me on this, but because it's a first reading, and it's been back and forth so many times, that I feel like if it's just one little his, her that we're talking about.
Because that's what we talked about last time, we were gonna bring it back this time.
Well, we brought it back this time simply because we were missing 2 committee members too, and we didn't feel it was fair to take a vote minus 2 committee members.
So you think making him to move it as your first reading, like move it forward to a second reading?
Move it forward to a
Okay.
second reading so that we can
I
vote.
misunderstood.
Oh, is that
I
what
thought you
your,
were
is
saying
that what
let's
your
vote.
motion is?
Mhm.
Now, before we, is that what your motion is gonna be, to move it forward like now, as a second reading to vote? Is that what?
For the next meeting.
At the next meeting.
Yep.
But further, I don't know why, Madam Chair,
Yes.
why we can't, if that has been the first of 4, and it's only one grammatical, sorry.
As it's the first of 4 and it's only one grammatical, it was my understanding at our last meeting that if there was only one grammatical change, or
Yes.
small whatever, that we could proceed.
Yes, that's my
That,
understanding.
maybe I misinterpreted.
That was my understanding. Nancy, and then, I think Joanne, and then Terry. Nancy? Oh, I'm sorry. So Nancy and then Terry.
So with a policy, it has to be, you cannot make fundamental changes to the policy at the first reading and then vote on it at the same night. So for example, if this was, if we are all okay with this policy as it is presented, with a little minor edit, that's no big deal, this can be our first reading. And then at our next meeting, we can vote on the final. Because at the last meeting, there was some pretty substantial changes with the additions and in the
Yes.
red and the crossing out.
Yep.
That was not allowed to be our first reading. This is our first reading. So now this can be our first reading as long as we don't have any more substantial changes. And then we can vote on it at our next meeting,
Okay.
even though we've been first reading it for 20 meetings.
Yeah.
It's still, we've been making substantial changes every single time.
Yes, Terry and then Jackie.
This will be my last thought, and I, we can move it to a second reading next and vote on it the next time we meet. Going back to the issue we've all been chatting about, page 5, used to be 5 minutes, used to state on our agendas, public comment beginning and the end. Those who disagree with that, what's your rationale? What's your rationale? That would certainly convince me that,
Okay.
I see your point. Right now, I don't understand it, so.
Okay, so, you ask a good question, and anybody can speak, but I'm gonna speak for myself first. In our policy subcommittee, because the public comment was so contentious, it really is becoming that way, we decided, or I actually, within our subcommittee, and then we had a discussion about it, I actually made the suggestion that we make this as vague as we could, because in my mind, public comment shall be for a period of 15 minutes. At the discretion of the chair, the public comment period can be extended. As I read that, it didn't lock me in to just one comment. So we had decided within our subcommittee, or at least a majority of us, to try, because we needed to move this forward, because the one thing we keep getting stuck on is the public comment. And so we reworded this, hopefully, I thought, in a way that we could at least move the policy forward. And then my intention on November 5th, when this now comes back as a second read, to take an official vote, because I think it has come to the point where we have to have a vote now on the second public comment and just get it on record. But to answer your question, Terry, and anybody can jump in, I am on the fence on this, to be honest with you, because having a background in public relations, I agree with you. I think we should provide, moments of, whatever public comment. I absolutely agree with you. And at the same time, I have listened to some of the other arguments, and I haven't quite decided where I land on this, because I see both parts of it. But I do strongly agree in what you say, Terry, that we should follow the superintendent's lead and at least keep it on the agenda, because it doesn't hurt anything just to leave it on the agenda. But that's just my thoughts on it right now, and doing what I feel I should do as a school committee member is to listen to everybody. And I was going to bring this back to for a vote on November 5th, so that everybody can vote. But we'll go ahead and Meredith?
So my 2 cents, and I hope I say it clear enough to everybody can hear me, is that I think that writing it this way, where it's a little bit more open and a little bit more general, gives the flexibility to the school committee to make that decision based on who the members of the school committee are and how comfortable they feel with 1 or 2 public comments. And, this policy, it's not, my understanding is that the policies we don't go back to these every year. So like the last one for this particular policy was 2013. So I think that writing it this way just gives that flexibility to allow the school committee to make that decision based on its members, because it changes. But it doesn't mean we would have to go back to the policy to change it back to 1, or add a 3rd, or add 1 every, after every agenda item. I think that this way it allows us to be flexible, but we don't have to go back to the policy to change it.
Okay, thank you, Meredith. Anybody else? Sharon?
Yeah.
Sharon.
So, I'm hearing what Meredith's saying, and I've been on the policy subcommittee since Monomoy started. We could go back to a policy and change it any month, and never mind any year. So my suggestion to get this to maybe be unanimous would be to just alter that one sentence here that said, to provide a public comment period shall be for a period of 15 minutes at the beginning and end of a meeting. And then we wouldn't have, at least, as far as I know, that if the intent isn't to change it for this year, we would keep that the same for this year. And if people wanted to change it next year, they could. But all the rest of the policy would be the same as what we're saying.
Joe.
The ideas, I don't like to attach names to this. I'm more interested in the ideas, but this path that Meredith and Tina have suggested going forward, I think makes more sense for us right now. It just makes, I think just makes more sense in general, that we have a difference about the number of times we're going to have public comment. Currently we have two. A member of the public has said we should have several, one after every key voted in the agenda. There are ideas about how many times we should have public comment. The policy resolution that we have says when we do have public comment, regardless of the number, we're going to restrict it in a certain number of ways, that there will be a period of 15 minutes, there'll be a specified time that a person might speak, and that there's some flexibility given to the chair. That's a good, sensible thing to do. It's a good, sensible, and practical way to go forward. To specify comment at the beginning of the meeting and at the end of the meeting, it isn't a simple thing. I personally think if we continue a second round of comment, we are wrong. We're doing a disservice to the communities. The second round of comment, I think, is not defensible at all and should be removed as soon as possible. We can delay that discussion to a different meeting. It need not hold up the adoption of the policy overall in the first place, because the policy will say, when comment is taking place, these are the conditions and circumstances that define it, and then later on, we can have a separate motion, a separate discussion, I believe as Tina suggested for November, to talk about how many times we want to have public comment, 1, 2, or as many items as are on the agenda. All those ideas have put forward. So I think we do better to say yes to the policy that has been presented with the grammatical edits that have been presented, and then we have a policy in place that makes sense, that binds the sensible work, and then get into the issue of numbers of times we hear from the public at a particular meeting. And somebody, at least for the record, ought to point out that Massachusetts law doesn't require any public comment whatsoever. It's all in the discretion of the school committee.
All right, thank you. Nancy?
So I'm usually not a huge proponent of this. And at the top of page 5, I want to rewrite that paragraph.
You want to rewrite the whole thing?
Yeah, but it's not that complicated. So, and to clarify what I said last time, if it is okay and agreed upon to change this, this could still be the first reading, because the change is being made at a public meeting, and this could be the first reading of the policy, and then it still could be voted on. So as long as all the changes are made, and I'm not saying that you all have to agree to it, I'm just saying that, just to clarify that. So.
Oh, point of order, hold on.
I think there's still a motion on the floor from Mary. I don't know if we can proceed without.
Oh, we never.
I don't, we didn't get a second though. I think Mary asked if she could, and I'm not sure if we actually did. I don't think, did we actually put the motion? I don't think, I think you
I think
asked
she
to
just
put
asked
her
us
off.
how she could, it was never seconded.
Yeah.
It was not a proper motion.
I don't think it was a motion, actually. I think, what I recall was Meredith put it on the floor, then we start
So she was
asking.
gonna make one, but no,
Yeah.
she
Got torn up.
But she
Okay.
wanted to make one. So
So-
right now, there's not an official motion, but go ahead.
So my sentence would, or my paragraph, which is actually just one sentence. There shall be at least one public comment period offered during each public meeting and there shall be at least one public comment period offered during each public meeting for a period of 15 minutes, and at the discretion of the chair, the public comment period can be extended.
Okay, so can you read that one more time? There shall
Maybe.
be, okay, go ahead.
There shall be at least one public comment period offered during each public meeting for a period of 15 minutes, and at the discretion of the chair, the public comment period can be extended. There's a whole lot of periods in there. So that way, my opinion on that, and why I'm suggesting that, is that we are not defining and saying we will have only one. We are not saying that we will have a public comment period. We will have at least one public comment period. So that opens it up. We're not changing anything now, because I agree, we had the conversation at our last meeting that this is not changing the agenda. This is simply saying the policy. Our policy before did not say we were having 2 public comment periods. We added that in. So that's my opinion.
Thank you. Terry, did you have a comment?
Briefly, I don't think as a member of the school committee, no matter what town you're representing, you'll ever avoid contentious issues. And so to try to create something to bring in flexibility and maybe make it a little bit vague, all it does is diminish a signal to those people who voted for us that we would prefer to have less public comment than more. And I just simply think that if it means next week we put it on an agenda by one person, and we vote up or down to have public comment at the end of the meeting, J, and it continues. I don't see any, I've been present all year, and for several years, I've never seen any reason where it's been that contentious where we said, wow, that was a hot topic. We've got to do something that would prevent that and insulate ourselves. Last comment. Anyone who runs for these positions, that's what you buy into. And so far, this is, other than the pandemic, this has been a very calm, pleasant year. So I don't know what I've missed. So I think that we've spent too much time, and I still don't deeply understand the purpose, but I would maybe request move the question and take it up with a rewrite and move on.
Okay. Joe, before I call on you, let me make one other comment. And again, having a background in public relations, I'm all about hearing from the public as much as possible. And speaking as one school committee member, and I think anybody in the public can say this is true. If I get an email, somebody's getting a response from me. I am probably the most responsive person in this room. And so, having said that, I also know that I chair other boards and commissions, and none of them have more than one public comment period. So, so again, I'm on the fence because I really see both parts of this, and just kind of thinking through for myself how to process this. Because I think another observation I've made, and one of the things I was thinking about, is how many people have shown up for the second public comment. I haven't really seen a lot. So I'm just kind of thinking through, now that I'm chair and running the agenda. I agree with you, Terry, it doesn't hurt to keep it on there. And at the same time, I don't know, I've heard other people have other arguments, so I'm still kind of processing it all myself. Joe, or Sharon, I think you had your hand up, or Joe? One of you? Joe.
If Ms. Scott's sentence were made as a motion, I would second it, and we could discuss it specifically and put it to a vote. I think it's more than sensible to hold off a little bit on hold off to a meeting or two so we can talk about a second round of comment. And again, I would say most school committees do not have second rounds of comments. No school committee is required to have any. I think that the point in Nancy's remark was about public meeting, and I think that's a very good addition, because that would mean the rule also applies to the functioning of subcommittees of the school committee, which are also public meetings. I need to be clear about that as well. The public can come to a subcommittee meeting as well, and the same overall policies and rules would apply, so that there would be, so we're saying there will be at least a one round of public comment with time extended should the issue warrant it at the discretion of the chair. So I would say let's move forward on this, and as Ms. Scott has suggested and others have said previously, Mary Liff and so forth.
Okay. I think it is, but I don't think we can though, Nancy, right? Or is it a motion to take what you said and bring it back as a second read? Is that the motion?
I mean, I can make a motion to edit paragraph 1 at the top of page 5 to state the sentence as I previously read.
Okay, but it would return back as a second read.
Next week.
Right.
Or next meeting.
Yeah, November 5th, yes.
I would offer an agenda item, Madam Chair, for next week's meeting. That is to have a vote on the second public comment.
Yep. We'll
at
definitely be doing
regular
that,
meetings.
yes. Okay, we'll absolutely be taking an official vote. Oh, Leah.
I'm so sorry. So, Nancy, was that a motion that you just made, and did I hear a second from Jackie?
Yeah, if it's necessary.
Okay.
That's fine.
Yeah. All right, so there's a motion on the floor to, and Nancy, you've already, so the sentence that Nancy has recommended, there's a motion on the floor to bring this back as a second read. In other words, it's not going to go back to the policy subcommittee for the 50th time.
This will be our final draft.
Right, this is the final draft with the sentence that Nancy has read, and then Joanne's his and her. And that is the motion, and Jackie seconded. Does anybody need the motion read again?
Yes, I would.
Okay, so, unless Leah, you captured it, or Nancy?
I could read it back, but I think I'd like Nancy just to be on standby. So Nancy's edit to page 5, paragraph 1. There shall be at least one public comment period per meeting.
Offered during each public meeting.
Offered during each public meeting.
For a period of 15 minutes.
And at the discretion of the chair?
The public comment period can be extended.
Okay.
And just let me know when you have that, Leah.
I have it.
Okay, and could you, if you don't mind, read it back to us?
Certainly. So Nancy's motion is with the edits to page 5, paragraph 1. Let me just get it. There shall be at least one public comment period offered during each public meeting for a period of 15 minutes, and at the discretion of the chair can be extended.
The public comment period can be
The
extended.
public comment, excuse me.
All right. So that's Nancy's motion, along with the his and hers. And then Jackie seconded. So now we're going to have a vote, and this is to return this to November 5th for a second reading and a vote on this policy. So it's not going to go back to the policy subcommittee. All right? Everybody clear on the motion? And if you're not, just let me know. All right? Do you need, are you good, Terry? Okay. All right, so Joe, this is the motion that Nancy's made, Jackie has seconded, so it's an aye or nay. Joe?
First, Tina, thank you for the clarity you've brought to all this so that we have a clear vote. My vote is aye, Joe Osceola.
Okay, thank you. Sharon?
Aye.
Okay. Jackie? Aye. All right, Meredith?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
Terry?
No.
All right, Joanne? Aye. And I'm an aye. So that's 7 ayes and 1 no. So that, it did pass, and it will return to the next meeting as a second read and a vote. And that is on the policy as it was, the motion was put forward. So it's on the policy will return with Nancy's edit on 1 and with the his and hers, and it will return exactly in that form on the 5th, and we will vote. And I will also, which I was going to do anyway, but Terry has also requested, I will also have on our next agenda an official vote, a discussion and a vote on the second public comment. And we will all be talking about that and then voting yea or nay. Okay? Okay, moving on to superintendent's report.
I'll be brief. 3 things. First, in your packet is the enrollment sheet that, based on the numbers that Leah anticipates being the official October 1 enrollment for this year. That's down 111 students. I discussed this at the end of September, but I'll just reinforce it. The reason we're down 111 students, first off, we're seeing fewer kindergarten students. The district and the Cape is shrinking slowly, so there's 20 fewer kindergarten students this year compared to last year. There are 60 students this year that are 60 additional students that are homeschoolings due to COVID, so that's a big change. The other thing that's different is we are only having our special needs students that are pre-K this year, just for social distancing reasons, so there are 48 fewer pre-K students in this mix. So that is a net loss of 128. And remember, it says it's only a loss of 111. That's because, as I mentioned before, we have gained a little over a dozen, 17 roughly, students that are here. We could call them COVID refugees, that there are individuals that have opted to live in vacation homes or with grandparents, riding out the pandemic. And the big question is, how many of them will stay post-pandemic? And hopefully we'll see post-pandemic the homeschoolers return. So check that one off the list. Item number 2, the commissioner has given school districts the ability to forego snow days and to go remote if there's a snow day. I mentioned this to the MREA when I was meeting with them, and I said the reality is this is likely moot for us. It's not that we don't have snow days. It's that when we have snow days, they're usually coupled with power outages, which would make the whole remote learning thing rather moot. So I said, although there's a big push for this in the state, I think the reality that I've experienced over 7 years, I do not know that there have been many days in 7 years that I have closed schools that did not also involve significant power outages when schools were closed. So if your teachers can't get online and your students can't get online, it's a snow day or a storm day or whatever we want to call it, even if everybody has their Chromebooks at home, because the Chromebook is just a little gray, paperweight at that moment in time. Last thing, the CDC changed yesterday, you might have seen this in the news, the definition of what a close contact is. I'm actually thankful that they did, because somebody woke up to the reality that just because somebody is within 6 feet of you and they have been there for less than 15 minutes, but they keep going in less than 15 minutes, and you can imagine a situation in a classroom where a student is interacting in closer range briefly here and there, or a teacher, that those sum total of 15 minutes can add up to be a close contact, which is why we as a school district have opted to, when we quarantine entire classrooms. And you maybe have noticed that there are other school districts that have been quarantining just the positive child. So I suspect that that will start to change as a statewide practice and catch up to the way we've been going about this, because it really doesn't make sense if someone's sitting 7 feet away from you and they've been there for the last week for all day in the elementary classroom. There are close contact folks, and so I'm glad that the research is and the definition is catching up with that. So Joy has been tweaking all of our COVID protocols and communications to reflect that. So that's all for the superintendent's report. My understanding is that in 6 minutes there are things people might want to
Yes.
be doing.
But we do have an executive
And we have an
session.
executive
We have
session.
an executive session.
That Michael said is going to be only 5 minutes.
Yes. Any questions for the superintendent? All right, seeing none. Declaration of surplus. May I have a motion, please, or somebody want to give this a stab? Jackie?
Short and sweet, short and sweet.
I move to approve the following as declaration of surplus,
As presented
as presented
in our packets.
in our packets.
Wonderful.
Second.
A second, and Nancy has seconded. All right, roll call vote. Any discussion? Roll call vote. Joe, this is for the declaration of surplus. And you're on mute, Joe?
Unmute, sorry, thought I hit that properly. Declaration of surplus, Joe Osceola, aye.
Thank you. Sharon?
Aye.
Jackie?
Aye.
Meredith?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
Terry?
Aye.
Joanne? Aye. And I'm an aye. So that passes. Presentation.
Tina, just a comment, I noticed one is a wheelchair,
Oh, yes.
and I was speaking to someone the other day that I wonder if Michael should contact the community center over here in Howard next door. They have a assortment of sort of free needy items such as shower chairs for folks or walkers. This may be very, very needed by somebody, and if you're stymied, it might be worth a phone call.
All right, thank you very
All
much.
right, wonderful. Terry, thank you. And presentation of warrants, the warrants have made their way around the room. Now we move into our second public comment. Speakers are limited to 5 minutes, additional time at the discretion of the chair. Do we have anyone from the public who would like to speak? Okay, seeing none, then we are going to adjourn to executive session pursuant to MGL 30A, Section 21, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining and negotiations. We do need to do a roll call vote into adjournment to executive session.
So moved.
Oh, yes, thank you. You made the motion? Second?
Second.
And Meredith seconded? So roll call vote. Joe?
Joe Osceola, aye.
Sharon?
Sharon Stout, aye.
Yeah, and you have to say your name too, I think, on this one.
Jackie, aye.
Thank you. Meredith?
Meredith, aye.
Nancy?
Nancy, aye.
Terry?
Terry Russell, yes.
Joanne? And Tina Gaines, yes, aye. So unanimous, we are now moving into adjournment. This has been adjourned at 8:57. And we'll see the public